So, Mr. President, President Trump, if you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall. Plain and simple.
It's the wall shutdown. That's what this is. Is the wall ever going to happen or not?
The president is prepared for a very long government shutdown.
So, Senator Schumer, we're not going to abandon the wall. We're going to build the wall.
We got a high-profile game of chicken.
We need a wall, and don't give in and don't fold. That's right.
I really respect everyone coming in not knowing whether they're going to get paid or not. It's just all of us doing what we can for each other for the holiday season.
AAA predicting more than 1/3 of Americans are traveling this holiday season, making it one of the busiest holiday travel seasons on record.
Thomas is looking to throw. He's got a receiver. Open in the end zone. It's Asbury. And it's a touchdown.
And two little boys get a big surprise from their Navy dad just in time for Christmas.
Let's go. Listen to Brian Kilmeade. Do not get dressed. It's a holiday. Stay in bed. Drink coffee under the sheets. Well, you shouldn't maybe drink coffee under the sheets.
Well, make sure you're watching us,
one
though. Make sure you're watching us because we are in the midst of the shutdown, the partial shutdown, and we are talking about it, breaking it down.
We are. Can I note this, though? Yesterday, the Army, which is an Army football team, 11-2, they beat Houston. They were 8-5, so Houston's not bad. 70-14. 7-0-1-4. I've not seen a football score like that in a long time. From Army?
Wow.
Congrats.
You're just excited they won the Army-Navy game. Now they've won this big game. I mean, teams do score 70 points all the time. No
Make an Army football
But let's
great.
talk about that shutdown because being a creature from Washington, as you often accuse me, we have this impasse thing going on. But what's interesting is, look, you've got both parties agreeing that they need to do something to fund border security, but they've made a political football out of the president's demand for a wall, which, by the way, began 2 years ago on a campaign trail when no one thought the guy could win. Here is President Trump tweeting yesterday, I won an election said to be one of the greatest of all time based on getting out of endless and costly foreign wars, and also based on strong borders, which will keep our country safe. We fight for the borders of other countries, but we won't fight for the borders of our own, a pledge he made based on consulting with the men and women of the Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection that said, we've got a crisis there.
And he's right. He's right, because if you listened to him campaign and paid any attention to anything he was saying all this. None of this should be surprising. Honestly, I wasn't surprised by the withdrawal from Syria. I wasn't surprised about him standing firm on a shutdown or the border. It's just a bunch of people who haven't paid attention to him and decided what he was going to do in their own minds. And now they're saying, oh, we're surprised and we can be outraged. This is what happens when somebody says that they're going to do something and they actually follow through.
And they actually do it. Yeah, no, we'll follow developments of all those decisions, no doubt. But these are campaign commitments. Now, here we are 2 days into the shutdown. Which he said he would do. The Senate is not coming back into session until the 27th. Am I right, Griff? Thursday the 27th. So go have your Christmas, open your presents. Santa's coming. The Grinch might steal them. But in the process, ain't going to fix this shutdown. It's happening. And you feel for the people who are furloughed. You know, a paycheck to paycheck can be difficult. At the same time, most Americans don't care about the pain of Washington. They voted for this president to build a wall. This is the 11th hour. It's like, not the 11th hour, it's like 11:59 at the end of a 2-year period where Republicans couldn't figure out how to give this president what he campaigned on. A lot of this blame goes on Republicans, congressional Republicans, who weren't willing to fight for this. Finally, they kind of are because of this president. This is the wall shutdown, and this is over $3.4 billion, which is a rounding error, as you pointed out earlier, in the federal budget. And for the left, this is all about resistance. Make no mistake about it. They made sure Bob Mueller was funded, the budget. He's funded. His special counsel will keep going, and they'll get paid. Congress is getting paid.
Yeah.
That's what it's over, is resistance.
Let me tell you the other story in Washington, though, and that is, Jed, you said you're not surprised by the withdrawal of Syria, but, of course, we had the news of Jim Mattis. He resigned, and now Brett McGurk, who many people don't know, was a career Washingtonian swamp creature, if you will. He worked in several presidencies. But the media, my colleagues back in Washington, are freaking out as usual. Here is a headline from the Washington Post, the paper of my hometown, saying a rogue presidency, the era of containing Trump is over.
Oh, wow.
This from Yahoo.
No, hold on. But you're giving them context, because what do they mean by, so they now say that rogue presidency is over, but rewind 2 years ago, Griff, they were saying something different.
Well, they were. Here is Yahoo, right? at this headline. In Trump's cabinet, how many generals is too many generals? Didn't like the generals he was bringing in. In this, New York Times, Trump's focus on generals for the top job stirs worries over military sway. And back to my Washington Post, Trump is surrounding himself with generals. That's dangerous. In CBS News, how unusual is Trump's cabinet of generals?
It's so funny. It's like he can't win. If he hires the generals, it's a problem, and they scream about it. Then when the generals resign or he fires anyone, then it's a problem. So basically, they're inclined to say that Trump is leaning toward chaos and mass pandemonium no matter what he does. And it's just interesting to see the media reaction. Suddenly, the media is going crazy. They're so upset that a president is withdrawing troops. I never thought I'd see Hollywood and the left-wing mainstream media be so upset about that.
Yeah, now they're all
Trump's
neocons.
Right, of course. Now they're all hawkish. They're like, I'm with Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is their hero now. It's amazing.
So it was General Kelly and General Mattis and General McMaster and General Flynn that were going to take America off the rails, right? Because they were all generals who'd worn the uniform of our nation. Now General Mattis leaving means the guardrails are off. Like, are we off the rails or do we have guardrails?
Right.
And it leads you to believe that all those statements are based on hating Trump and his perspective. And you're right. Suddenly now all these people, I can't stand it. You watch cable news. Oh, look, our Syria policy. Like, all of them wanted out. All of them thought it was wrong.
Right.
All of them. All these, and now suddenly they're hawkish.
And to be clear,
it's such hypocrisy.
To be clear, if President Obama had been in this position making these very same decisions, he would absolutely 100% be applauded for every single one of them. And he would not be questioned also on his transitions. If people were resigning or if people were leaving, the argument from the media would be, well, you know what, they just have a differing of opinion. Or that person went in and they established a goal and a mission together, and now they're moving on to another area. It would be justified and it would be explained. It would not be condemned.
Well said. Just to be clear as well, these policy decisions will be owned by President Trump.
That's right.
I mean, we don't know which way Syria is going to go in Afghanistan.
Right.
A lot of smart people who I love and respect are really furious about this decision and say it could lead to the rise of ISIS again, Iran expanding its influence. So it's the macro perspective is, what did we get out of the Middle East? Let's pull out. The micro perspective is we're abandoning some allies.
Right.
This is a really tough decision. So it remains to be seen. But he at least is committing to something he believes in. We'll see where it goes, and we got to pay close
But here's the problem, and that is it is a very legit debate over whether General Mattis's resignation, which was born out of an alliance to essentially the Kurds, right? A very sort of mundane topic for a lot of Americans, but a very important one to the strategic thinkers. But yet the media, the point we're making here is very important, and that is the media keeps looking for a seminal moment that shows President Trump is going down. And it doesn't matter whether it's the next general to resign or whether it's shutting the government down or every other thing. You look at the New York Times today. They put on the cover a picture of the president. Let me hold that up, actually. You can see there.
The photo is quite telling.
The photo. This is the president waving, but they've made it dark and gloom and glib. They're just looking for that moment that they can say, "Ha, got him."
And we want to hear what you have to say. Actually, I'm curious. Friends at FoxNews.com. What do you think about these resignations? What do you think? Is it Armageddon? Is the Trump administration imploding? Tell us what you think.
Yeah, let us know. We're going to read some headlines, and then we have another story on the other side too.
Here with your headlines. First up, we begin with a Fox News alert. At least 222 people are dead and more than 800 injured after a volcano triggers a tsunami in Indonesia. Watch as floodwaters rushed a concert. One band member and their manager died, and dozens are missing. A suspected terrorist is finally charged in connection to the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attack. Peter Sharif was arrested in the African nation of Djibouti. He was extradited and arrived in France today. He is accused of helping plan the attack that killed 12 people at the satirical newspaper in Paris. The TSA is changing where air marshals sit on airplanes. Starting next week, agents will sit toward the back, according to ABC News. The change is meant to help air marshals keep a closer eye on passengers who could be at risk. In the past, they have been seated in the front to protect pilots in the cockpit. And those are your headlines.
Sort of makes sense, but it's not clear why we're telling people this.
Well, I think people like to know when they get on the plane where the air marshal. Didn't you ever see that movie where they're like, "Where's the air marshal?"
No, I've never actually looked for an air marshal.
You don't reveal your plan to the
I
enemy.
do. I look. I want to know where they are.
Well, you're very observant. It's true. Okay. So speaking of being observant at some level, you take your kids, they go to see Santa, right? And you don't know what's going to happen because kids are like, look at this big guy in a red suit with a big beard and he's kind of jolly and he kind of scares me. Well, there's your paper, again, delivering, Griff, from the Washington Post. This is a headline that caught our eye about sitting on Santa's lap. said, should crying children sit on Santa's lap for photos? Here's why some parents are saying no. Inside the article, and I quote from the article from the Washington Post, some anonymous sources have begun questioning the way the culture approaches photos with Santa amid the Me Too movement and a national conversation over how to teach young children about consent and physical boundaries. If parents force their children to sit on Santa's lap for a photo, some have asked what kind of message does that send them later on in life?
Okay, Stop. I can't with this. This is so crazy. And it also minimizes. First of all, I sat on Santa's lap when I was a baby. I was a very shy baby. There were many tears shed. There were many screams. It did not affect the way I view the larger dynamic between adult males and myself. Stuff like this actually makes me really mad because it minimizes the Me Too movement. There are really serious cases in this Me Too movement that deserve our attention, that deserve conversations. And when you talk about it in light of Santa Claus and babies with their parents standing there, it just minimizes the whole thing. It's the same thing they do with every issue where they try to everything's racist and then suddenly real issues of racism don't get the proper attention they deserve. This is madness. Crazy.
I have two daughters that I have put on Santa's lap for years. Now they're 17 and 13, so they don't sit on Santa's lap anymore. But as a child, you wait hours sometimes in line at the mall to put them on Santa's lap. One of the mothers, a mother of a 1-year-old in that article, saying that, well, it's just for you at the expense of the child's, misery. And it's like, no, it's to introduce them to Santa, to participate in our traditions. Too many times, I feel like on this show and in our society, we're fighting for traditions that we hold near and dear. And putting your child on Santa's lap, darn it, is not wrong.
Yeah, no, it's lunacy. And it is kind of for me. I mean, I love actually putting my kid in Santa's lap and be like, what's going to happen next? Click, 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 I don't really care. You're going to be fine, kid. I love you. You're in a wonderful environment. It's just
Santa
insane.
Claus. I mean, it's not like you're putting him on the Grinch's lap.
Well, that would be
a
even
different story.
better. My 3-year-old Rex, all he asked for Christmas was the Grinch. I think he takes after me.
But he's going to get
bucks.
Who wants $4,800?
My 7-year-old wants $4,800.
Quite the entrepreneur.
That ain't happening either.
Yeah, email us.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
At foxnews.com. How you feel about Santa's lap and whether or not Pete should give in on the $4,800.
Ain't happening. And send us your photos. Your kids on Santa's lap. They're always entertaining.
Classics,
please.
All right, as our government battles over border security, the migrant crisis is exploding in Europe. Why our next guest says it's a case study of exactly what the president is trying to avoid.
And fans delighted to find Tom Hanks at an In-N-Out burger.
Ooh.
But what he did next made them even happier.
Welcome back. The migrant crisis exploding in Europe, surging to more than 1 million at its peak as a result of its open border policy. Our next guest argues this disaster is a case study of exactly what President Trump is trying to avoid in his push for border security. Here to explain it, Vice President of Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation, James Carafano. James, good morning. Merry Christmas to you.
Good to be with you.
So you wrote this awesome op-ed for foxnews.com, the headline of which is "We need Trump's border wall plus other measures to reduce illegal immigration." I want to get to that, but first, there's a headline there. Let's talk about why what we're seeing in Europe is a preview, perhaps, of what's coming here.
Well, I think the biggest issue, which is the one we're not talking about, is really weaponizing migrants, right? We have the UN Migration Pact, the UN Refugee Pact. We saw Erdogan in Turkey threaten to flood Europe with refugees if he didn't get what he wanted. We saw the Russians cranking up military operations in Syria to drive people out. So if you create kind of this right to migrate, then what you're telling bad people is, look, just figure out how to put a bunch of migrants on the road and destabilize a country. We even saw this in Latin America. The caravans started because people wanted to aim people at the U.S. border to demonstrate it that it was uncontrollable. So when you create this environment where you can use migrants as a tool to punish people, that's a big danger. And we saw that happen big time in Europe. And I think that's something that we have to be concerned about over the long term.
You say, we saw that in Europe. So if you look at the years of 2015, 2016, just 2-3 years ago, they peaked at over 1.2 million migrants seeking asylum. But ultimately, are we now having a debate over whether or not the president has the right to the sovereignty of our borders?
Well, I think we are. And increasingly, we've seen not just a political debate, but we've seen judicial activism where judges have really kind of taken the responsibility out of the president's hands. And look, this is a major issue. And we can even tie this back into the Syria debate. When we talk about what the president's doing in the Middle East, remember when the president came in office, in 2015, over 1 million refugees poured from the Middle East and North Africa into Western Europe. This administration over 2 years, working with the Europeans, has driven that down to a trickle. And part of the reason of that is because we intervene, the Europeans work with us. So when you take away the right of sovereign authorities to deal with the problems, then you can see these floods.
And you know, James, I want to just, from your article, you say if America fails to maintain firm control of who gets into our country and who stays, the resulting crisis could make the woes of Europe look petty. You write that during the middle of a shutdown over border security.
Well, you know, I do think the president has a point here, and you know, we can debate the $5 billion and what you want on the border and everything else, but this is really a political debate, and we all know that. It's not really about border security. It's about a power struggle. And what it's done is it's created a precedent where essentially we have put the political power struggle over the obligation of government to do its duty. And I think that's really dangerous.
And lastly, I want to hit on one thing, and that is we're not doing enough to enforce our existing immigration laws, you write.
Yeah, I think it's a multi-part. Look, you're not just going to solve this with putting stuff on the border, right? You've got to end catch and release, right? So you have to end the loopholes that allow people to stay here and just abscond and stay. You have to enforce your laws internally. You have to work with countries, and it's not just foreign aid. I think that's overly simplistic. You have to get deep down where the source is, identify it, and stop these problems before they get into the butter. So you've got to work it across the spectrum, not just at the border. Good insight. James Carafano, thank you very much. Go to foxnews.com and read his op-ed, and Merry Christmas to you. Hey, thanks for having me. All right. Money for nothing? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you know her, thinks lawmakers shouldn't get paid if there's a shutdown. Does Bill Bennett agree? We'll ask him coming up. And this Army veteran lost his leg and arm in an IED explosion while serving overseas. This morning, he's here with a special organization to tell us how you can help injured veterans like him overcome their wounds. You don't want to miss this story. More real trees. And finally, free. Actor Tom Hanks picking up the lunch tab for people at an In-N-Out burger in California. He also spent time taking photos with folks. Good on you, Tom. Pete?
Good on him. You're right, Griff. Thanks. Well, 'tis the season for giving. This week, we are taking a look at some worthy causes that you at home can help support this Christmas season.
One organization is changing wounded warriors' lives. The Independence Fund helps our nation's veterans who have been wounded in the line of duty and their caregivers gain independence once again. Here with more is CEO of the Independence Fund, Sarah Verardo, and veteran Army Specialist Jeffrey Cavedo. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your service. You are an inspiration to so many Americans across the country right now. Talk to us a little bit about your service.
First, thank you guys for having us here. My name is Jeffrey. I got blown up November 30th, 2011 with my partner while clearing an IED, clearing an alleyway, sorry. And at the end of the alleyway, there was an IED there, and we both got blown up.
And as I said to you during the break, I mean, what happened to you could have happened to anybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
It happened to you. You've recovered since. The Independence Fund has been part of that recovery. Talk to us about what that's meant to you.
I think it's great, the fact that, you know, organizations like Independence Fund, how people come together and, you know, support the cause regardless, you know, of everything, not knowing me, you know, and people just uploading, giving their hard work money for it. Yeah. And I think it's amazing how people can come together and support that cause.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about the Independence Fund and your mission and what your inspiration was for that fund.
The Independence Fund believes in empowering our nation's most severely injured, and obviously it's deeply personal to me. My husband's currently recovering from his 119th surgery post-Afghanistan. So all of us at the fund, we live the mission every day. It's our greatest honor to serve those who have served us so well and been severely injured doing so.
Wow.
Absolutely. And what inspired you and others to do that? I mean, there's a recognition of that service and that sacrifice, but to say I'm going to go to the next level and help those who are the most affected by it.
We really believe that giving independence back to those who sacrificed theirs for us is the greatest thing we can do as a nation. And through really tangible ways, that's what we think people who have given, literally paid service for their country with an arm and a leg, as this brave young man has, we can't do enough for him and his family to say thank you. We owe them everything we have.
Sarah, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to toss it to you. You actually have something to share with us today.
You've got maybe a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
We do have a surprise. One of the very cool things the Independence Fund does is we award track all-terrain wheelchairs, and we have a surprise for you today. We do. We're going to bring it on in now.
Can we bring it in?
Can we bring it in?
We're going to bring it in.
Come on, if we've got it.
In here.
I know you're not going to believe this.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we're going to let you get in that and give it a spin.
Well done.
Phenomenal.
How do you use this?
You're going to find out,
Jump
Jeffrey.
on in.
You're about to find out. Wow.
And
Wow.
snow, ice, sand, hunting, fishing, shooting. It is no match for these track chairs, which the Independence Fund provides through generous donors to our nation's most catastrophically injured.
Jeffrey just said, imagine going to the mall with this. You're going to be the baddest man at the mall.
How do you feel? How do you feel right now getting this?
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty neat,
That's
right?
pretty awesome.
And now the VA doesn't supply stuff like this, so you really rely on private donations to be able to provide things like this to vets.
We do. The VA considers these to be luxury items, and of course we feel that someone who paid for their service with this country with their body parts, there is not enough we can do, and so we rely on patriotic Americans who help us give these to our nation's heroes.
There's not a missile launcher in there, is there? I think Jeffrey kind of wishes there was.
All the secrets.
Jeffrey, but let me ask you a second. But what does it mean to you that you're severely injured, you come home? What does it say about the American people and their commitment to the warfighter that people care so much to say, hey, we're going to follow through?
You know what? I think, a lot of people ask, like, how do you get through it? And I think a lot of support, both family and just regular people, just like how we were talking about earlier, coming together and supporting this. Like people, like I said, people that I've never met before, and people that are like, hey, let's go out for dinner, let's go out for lunch, and I'm like, you don't need to do all that, like it was my job, and anybody else in the service that that can say that, and it just very warm, very welcoming, the fact that they're able to do that.
Sarah, what's it like for you to be able to provide something like this? I can't imagine the feeling of knowing this is someone who fought for our country, comes home, has these injuries, and you're able to provide something that really can be completely transformative for their lives.
Well, we've provided 2,300, he's our 2,348th recipient of these chairs, $37 million in chairs, but we have 129 veterans on our wait list right now.
Wow.
But Jeffrey has two little boys, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I'm trying to picture, we need like a sidecar.
A 1-year-old and a 2-year-old? They're going to be all over that.
I know,
chair.
in the lap. Are you going to fit everybody, right?
Only getting great hairs here.
I think this is going to be a wonderful Christmas,
Super cool.
and I mean, it's no match for snow, so maybe you'll get a little snow. We'll get you a plow.
We want to remind people that they should donate. You have to visit independencefund.org. Please donate it. It's able to provide amazing things like this for men and women in uniform that come home.
Sarah, Jeffrey, thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for all you do in your service. Thank you
so much for your service and for being here.
Congrats. Enjoy.
Yeah,
This is pretty cool.
Better mow through some snow for us on that. Okay?
Coming up, we have former drug czar Bill Bennett.
Plus, goodbye 9 to 5, and hello 4-day work week. Big changes, unless you live in France, it could be coming to your office soon.
To take the polar plunge.
It may be cold outside, but we'll be getting on that inflatable slide and taking the trip down into the freezing cold pool of water. I think Dave, our stage manager, actually put ice cubes in it.
Aw, man.
Yeah, he did, because he's masochistic. To celebrate the holidays. No, not holidays. To celebrate Christmas. Obviously, Griff will be going.
Oh, yes.
I was going to go for a swim today anyway. Make sure you tune in during our 9 o'clock hour to watch us go into that water.
And you're not going to break your shoulder this time, are you?
No.
This time it's all, he's going to go just sit, proper form down the slide like this, like the mannequin says you're supposed to do. No head first nonsense from Griff this morning.
It's going to be cold, guys.
No,
it's going to be cold.
It's all in the mind.
It's all in your mind.
Wow.
So they say.
Well, now on to more serious topics. I don't know if he's ever done a polar plunge, but we're about to find out. Bill Bennett, Fox News contributor, former drug czar under George H.W. Bush, and author of The True St. Nicholas, Why He Mattered to Christmas. Check the book out. It's worth sharing with your kids, too, The True St. Nicholas. Bill Bennett, to start out, have you polar plunged?
I have polar plunged in the Atlantic Ocean. I wish I could be there with you this morning.
I wish you were. Any tips for us? Any tips?
Too far away. Yeah, get in and get out. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. Well, we'll arrange that. We have a few more months of winter, and we'll try and get you in here, Dr. Bennett.
Thank you.
Doctor, thanks for joining us. Part of what we're talking about at the border and the wall is the drug epidemic we're facing on our border. Here's a montage of President Trump talking about drugs and how they affect our country. Listen.
We have to keep the drugs out of our country. Right now, we're getting the drugs, they're getting the cash.
A wall will not only keep out criminals, but it will also keep out the drugs and heroin.
Drugs are poisoning our youth and poisoning our people, illegally pouring into our country.
It's more than just the wall, Dr. Bennett. 86% of heroin brought into the U.S. came from Mexico. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, this is exactly right. The president's instincts on this are very, very good. Just illustrative, I think, Pete, is 9/11. After 9/11, you'll remember we shut down the border. And when we shut down the border, drugs didn't come in. Emergency room admissions were down. The price of drugs went up, which means if you shut down that border, if you close it off, if you build a wall, it can have a real and profound difference. Now, it's not the only place. The president is also putting pressure on China, which is good because it's the major producer and exporter of fentanyl, which is now killing more people than anywhere else. But Mexico is the point of transshipment for a lot of these drugs. So his instincts are right, and it is connected to this whole wall debate. Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Bennett, while we are in this shutdown, I mean, we're talking about tons, not pounds, of narcotics every day. We have an out-of-control fentanyl crisis, and this is a big part of it. Do you believe the president is right to hold out and stick to his guns during the shutdown?
Yes, I believe he is right. Look, this wasn't just a campaign promise. I think this was the principal campaign promise. And most of the American people are with him in this notion that you've got to have a country, and to have a country, you've got to have sovereignty, and you've got to have borders. So he's making a line in the sand now, and I think he's absolutely right. I hope he holds firm. I think he will, and we'll see what happens. The opposition is really ridiculous, and as you guys have well pointed out earlier, they were for a wall. They were for this kind of thing. This is just about getting Trump and opposing Trump and seeing if they can take him down any which way they can.
You know, you took drugs on as the former drug czar.
Yeah.
What do you think is the answer to all of this?
We actually did quite successfully under George Herbert Walker Bush and the use of the private sector and the government. Drug use went down in the late 80s by about 50%. It was a partnership of the public and the private, and that's what's needed. Again, I think the president's instincts are right. We need to do more. If you go to the Vietnam Memorial here, you will see the names of some 45, 50,000 people. We're losing more than that number every year to the drug epidemic now. It's quieter than the cocaine and crack epidemic, but it is every bit as deadly serious, and we've got to get after it. Again,
Nonetheless,
I'll praise the president's instincts on this. We need to do more. He needs to enlist more of the cabinet agencies.
No, great point. Well, Dr. Bennett, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with a certain socialist from the Bronx whose first name is Alexandria. She tweeted this yesterday, and I want to get your reaction to it. Next time we have a government shutdown, congressional salaries should be furloughed as well. It's completely unacceptable that members of Congress can force a government shutdown on partisan lines and then have congressional salaries exempt from that decision. Have some integrity. Washington writes rules for other people that they never want to apply to themselves. Will anyone ever have the courage on the right or the left to actually do that?
It's interesting. She must be listening to you, Pete, on the subway or something, because this shows that the learning curve is possible. Let's borrow a little bit from the world of education. I think we should have changes in tenure, both for teaching and for members of Congress. And how about merit pay? For members of Congress. If we can keep them from doing things that are bad and they do meritorious things, let's pay them. Otherwise, sounds like a good idea. She's coming along. Good for her.
Good for her. But most people connect with the idea that if you're not doing your job and not getting it done successfully, then you don't get paid.
That's a quaint notion, but it's a good one. Yeah. If you didn't show up this morning, I would argue that, maybe you could be docked.
I might be in trouble. It's happened to me before, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
I found out the hard way. Yeah.
Dr. Bennett, I want to bring you back just to the question I asked before, whether you supported the president shutting things down, but Also, how long do you think this should last? How long should we go? Because clearly, Congress is out until Thursday, but it looks like it's going to go longer.
I don't know, but I've lived through many of these. The repercussions of them tend not to be so serious. Everybody predicts the party in power, the party in the White House will lose votes on this and support. It isn't always true by any stretch. So we'll see. I think he's right to stand his ground, and let's hope this thing turns out right. It is ridiculous for them to be objecting. What is it? Less than 1/10%? That's the amount of money.
0.3% is what we're fighting over.
That's the amount of money in question. So let's get it done. And that's an important thing. It's an important issue. And again, this wasn't a campaign promise. This was the heart of the campaign.
I just don't know how it passes the common sense test. Their opposition is too expensive for liberals and ineffective when all the evidence is on the other side. How do they win that debate?
Well, if they want to use that as the new criterion for evaluating government programs, I think that's great. Is it too expensive, and is it doing any good? We could go through government programs with a thresher if we had that as the criteria. So that's not a bad start. But in this case, it makes absolute sense.
Dr. Bennett, thank you for the polar plunge tips. Get in, get out. I will do that.
Keep it in
Thank
mind.
you also for writing that great book, The True Story of St. Nicholas. It is an important one, and I would encourage everyone to get it.
It's a really important one. The True St. Nicholas, this idea that we talk about happy holidays and all this stuff, but ultimately it all comes down to core of faith. That is the reason for the season.
This was a holy man, a very good man, and he's a great model for us at Christmas time and all year long.
Good stuff.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. All right, now we'll go to our own St. Rick. Right, Muth.
Done.
See what I did there, Rick?
What's that?
See what I did there?
I did. It was very clever. That was your best one of the day.
That really is.
Hey, let's talk a little bit of weather out there. Excuse me, on the maps. Throw the maps up. Show you what's happening right now. Temperature-wise, it is not that bad across the east. Still a little chilly, but the cold air coming in across parts of the central part of the country. And we've got a little bit of snow. If you're thinking I would like some white Christmas, go across parts of Missouri. Look outside your window this morning, maybe towards St. Louis in about an hour. You'll see a few flakes. That's going to be about all you're going to get. All the action is out across the west. A big storm moving on in, and that is going to be a weather maker for us for much of this coming week. Everything through Tuesday good. Wednesday, when you're trying to head back home, big problems across parts of the Central Plains. All right, back to you inside.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, Rick, thanks very much. So goodbye to 9 to 5 and hello 4-day work week. It may sound great, but our next guest says it won't work for everyone. He explains.
And are you looking for a stress-free Christmas? Kurt the Cyber Guy is here with the gadgets to make your worries go away, and he's coming up.
Santa Claus.